What's up, guys? Skippy Africanus here, and my voice is completely fucking trash. Like, I'm no longer dying, but after the intense coughing barrage that I had been experiencing the last few days, yeah, it's pretty much killed my voice, so I'm gonna sound pretty weird in this video. Like, probably not too weird. I can usually run a few sentences pretty normally, but you're eventually gonna hear some, like, definite, you know, like, tone pitches, so, yeah, expect that. But anyways, in today's video, we're going to be going over the MX9, or as it's known in real life, the Steyr 9mm. This rifle, or rather subgun, has been in production since 1988 and serves primarily with police forces. While they aren't as common here in the US, they do see considerable service overseas, primarily with countries that are familiar with the AUG platform, given that this really is just a conversion to get the standard 5.56 gun to fire 9mm, and a very easy conversion at that. More on that a little bit later. But anyways, the 9mm AUG uses the standard MPI 69 magazines, which are the ones we see in game, coming in either 25 to 32 round capacities. However, they are not limited to solely using these magazines, which look cool as hell. They are capable of using a plethora of other different mags, from stuff like Colt 9mm mags to even Glock mags. Disgusting. They come with a variety of different barrel lengths, from a 12.8-inch barrel all the way up to a 16.5-inch barrel, and use the same terrible progressive trigger as the standard AUG. Note, this is just a complaint on progressive triggers, which, if you don't know what that is, it simply means that if you pull the trigger slightly back, it only fires one shot. Pull it all the way back, and that's how you get your full auto. Now, what I am not saying is that the semi-auto AUGs have bad triggers, as is the common complaint from, like, a fairly significant portion of people. They always say that the semi-auto AUG has a terrible trigger, but I mean, granted, I do have the finger strength greater than a toddler, so that might be the reason that not only do I not mind the AUG trigger, I actually kind of like it. And before you start going in the comments saying, "But Scipio, the AUG trigger is..." Okay, so I had mentioned that, you know, I was feeling better, and that, you know, the only problem was it was hard. It was like, my voice sounded weird, but I tried to recreate that last voice about 5 times, and each time ended in, like, a full-on coughing fit. So just imagine that I'm making fun of people that get all their information from, about bullpups from gun tubers, and, what I was about to say was, they're not the, you know, I like the AUG trigger, but it's not the best, I'll admit that. But, you know, again, I do have the finger strength greater than a toddler, and, people don't like hearing when you mention you don't hate bullpup triggers. But anyways, that's a little bit off topic. Back into the MX9, or 9mm AUG, or more specifically, its actual bad trigger, the progressive trigger. Now, I am not the biggest fan of progressive triggers, though, to be fair, I have yet to shoot a gun that has one. Like, I've gotten the opportunity to shoot full autos, like, a couple times, but, you know, for the most part, none of them had, like, a progressive trigger. Like, I got to shoot a full auto Stemple a month or so back that this really cool dude let me try out. And, you know, the full auto was certainly controllable. Having that extra step, though, would have definitely made things a little bit annoying, like having to just yank it back as opposed to just slowly pulling it back. But anyways, as mentioned, the 9mm AUG is essentially just a standard AUG converted to fire 9mm. But that being said, though it is a simple conversion, there is a lot going on between this thing versus this thing, and I feel it is best explained over on the IRL cam. So let's see how this thing works, and more importantly, what makes it different from your standard AUG. Alright, so I have my AUG here, or rather AUG clone. This isn't a true Steyr AUG right here, but it works exactly the same way. As the bullet is fired, starting off back here because it's a bullpup, as the bullet is fired, gas travels behind it through the whole system until it reaches this point. This is actually your gas port, and gas vents right down through here through this tube. And inside of that gas tube is this small little piston that actually does sit with a spring in it normally, just to be able to return it back, but the gas presses against this piston, and in just a small short stroke, it sends the bolt carrier rearwards. To which it does this by striking against the end of this piece right here. There is this piece right here, of course, but that is just mainly to keep the bolt carrier stabilized. Now, when the gun is actually in battery, this bolt head is pushed much further rearward, more so than I can actually do. They have this weird little thing right here, and it's kind of eating up my finger trying to do it. But just keep in mind... There we go. Just keep in mind that when this gun is actually in battery, this whole bolt is pushed rearward and it's actually rotated a little bit. Now, as this bolt carrier moves back, you can see that little pin thing right there. It's going to be forced to ride along this track. So the bolt head will not go too far rearward, or it won't go rearward at all until it has maintained a full rotation via that little cam. So kind of just imagine I have it rotated, but as that bolt carrier moves rearward, it'll slowly rotate. Then these will be clear of any metal obstructions. The bolt can go backwards, come forward again, pick up a cartridge, go back into battery, and you're ready to fire again. Now, before we go into what differentiates this from the 9mm AUG, we forgot one little part here, and that is the actual gas inflow regulator. So with the 5.56 models, you actually have what's called just a gas regulator. So if you have, lesser powered ammunition, you set it to a setting for that. Higher powered stuff, you set it to a setting for that. Usually there'll be some for like suppressors or something like that. But all in all, you have a way to adjust gas flow, and all that is it just rotates, and it has a hole that gets bigger or smaller to allow however much gas to go into the gun. It sits right at the end of that tube that, rides along the barrel that we discussed earlier. Now, this is a good place to start with the little differences between the 9mm AUG and the standard AUG, or should I say real major differences. And the major difference here is on the 9mm AUG. Not only is there not a way to adjust gas flow, like you do not have this piece, this whole short stroke piston system is also just flat out not on there. The 9mm AUG works like a straight blowback, meaning that you also do not have this bolt head. If you see, I'll post some pictures with the 9mm AUG bolt. You'll see it's kind of just, it's essentially just this bolt carrier, and the bolt head's kind of like in here. There's no system being locked, having to rotate, any of that stuff. It just relies solely on the mass of the bolt as well as spring pressure to be able to handle the cartridge safely. And to add another neat little feature as well, since you don't need that whole gas system, you don't need a piston pushing on this, they end up actually having this part being mirrored over here, so you don't have this long extension because you don't need it. So now before we go, let's talk about the conversion itself, because as mentioned, it is a very, very simple conversion. So let's say I have my 5.56 AUG all disassembled right here, and I want to use Scipio magic to make the correct parts be the 9mm parts to be able to run this with 9mm. There are only 4 main parts. Well, I guess there's 3 parts I would need to change, 1 part that I would need to add. First off would be the bolt. I would need a just full-on 9mm compatible bolt. Then after that, I would just need a 9mm barrel, and if you're not aware of this, AUG barrels are a very, very simple swap. So it's not something like an AR where you can't really take the barrel out super easily. The AUG is made to take the barrel out easily, so we would just need to turn this one into a 9mm barrel. Next up, we would need to have the appropriate 9mm magazines. As mentioned, they actually have these in a plethora of mags. They do tend to run with the MPI-69 mags. And since I'm appalled by stuff like Glock mags, we're just going to assume that I turn this 5.56 mag into an MPI-69 mag. Next up, and the last thing we would actually need, of course, is the little adapter to be able to fit that MPI-69 mag into the gun. Which, again, much like, as mentioned, the barrel was going to be an easy just throw it in the gun, that one pops right in there as well. And if I recall correctly, it actually uses the original mag cache to hold it in place. But all in all, with all those parts added, you would have a 9mm AUG at that point. You're still using the same stock, the same, I'm pretty sure this is the receiver. If not, you're still using this same part right here. Same trigger pack, all that stuff. You're just swapping out your bolt, barrel, that magazine, and then adding a little magwell adapter to be able to fit the magazine. So that's pretty much all the good info on, 9mm AUG in general, like how it works, the difference between it and the standard 5.56, and of course, what the conversion process itself actually entangles. And that is also it for this video on the MX9 from Modern Warfare 2, or as it's known in real life, the 9mm AUG. I hope you all enjoyed the video as much as I personally enjoyed making it, and I will see y'all in the next Guns of Modern Warfare 2 in real life video, and hopefully with a less cartoonish sounding voice.